threatened by an unseen enemy in a war with no boundaries. The battlefield, a digital domain of computer networks. If you can imagine such a war, you are on the way to understanding the coming age of information warfare.
147.
Emerging from the depths of cyberspace is a new form of warfare. Combat based on the premise that power is no longer derived from land, wealth, or military muscle, but from information. Information warfare merges the miracles of modern technology with the ancient strategy of victory without violence. A modern nation's resources and warfighting ability are dependent on computer-controlled information systems. Attacks on these systems would come not from the deadly thunder of armed force, but from a cyber assault, using weapons of silicon destruction. In cyber war, computers are the weapons and information is the target. Cyberspace has become the fifth dimension of warfare.
A cyber attack is an attack against whether it's an individual, a company, or a country that uses no bombs, no bullets, and no bayonets, no conventional weapon systems. They're all electronic, whether it's software, eavesdropping, magnetic weapons, anything throughout an entire spectrum of non-lethal electronic weapons.
The U.S. Defense Department is mobilizing for the coming age of cyber war. The National Defense University is presently training a new class of warriors, computer commandos, skilled in the art of information warfare.
Or demilitarized sector, and you can make it much more forbidding terrain for trespassers and aggressors.
Our mission is to explore what the impact of the information age is on how we go about providing national security, how we develop national security policy, how the United States exerts power in the world, how we protect ourselves from new and evolving threats.
We have a lightning.
The military is developing an arsenal of destructive software capable of destroying the enemy's civilian infrastructure.
Okay.
Computer commandos could knock out a country's power grid, electronically usurp an enemy's money supply, snarl the transportation system. Software controls every tool of the war-making machine, from the transportation of troops to weapon systems. Cyber weapons could eliminate the enemy's ability to wage war without firing a shot.
The United States is looking into offensive malicious software, not necessarily computer viruses, but how do we use a piece of software to take down an adversary's radar system, military systems, or even their financial systems if we're dealing with different kinds of attacks. The majority of these are classified, very heavily classified, as what we call black programs.
Tomorrow's computer commandos will assault enemy software using top-secret cyber weapons. One type of malicious software is an assassin computer virus. Called a worm, it's programmed to slither through a computer's memory, destroying or altering data. A worm could change the software instructions of a missile system. The missile could malfunction or even be forced to target the enemy's own troops. Logic bombs are tiny programs that are secreted into the enemy's computer. The malicious software waits like a time bomb for certain conditions to occur. Then it attacks, destroying files, corrupting data, putting the computer and all others networked to it out of business. Trojan horses fight like marauding barbarians, rampaging through a computer until the hard disk fails and the system crashes.
How do I inject malicious software of the Trojan horse kind that is injected into their system with some sort of payload, a detonator of some sort, that upon a certain event at a certain time, or perhaps remote control triggered, the payload within this malicious software will then do its thing, which might be cause a meltdown in this nuclear power plant, erase $32 trillion from this bank, make every telephone call that comes through the switching center go to the IRS, whatever it may be.
The Persian Gulf War witnessed the birth of cyber war, where machines, not humans, are the target. Allegedly, the CIA planted a microchip in a printer used by Iraqi air defense radar.
What we did is the NSA did build a chip, and they did give it to the CIA, and it did get into not one printer, it got into a bunch of computer equipment that in fact did migrate over to Iraq. But it didn't have a computer virus in it. It had a homing beacon, a very narrow frequency transmitter, so the spy satellites could identify the location of the technology, which would enhance our targetability for bombing. If it had a printer, we bombed it. If there was a printer there, there's a computer there, we don't want to have a computer. Bomb, done. Very, very smart.
By applying the tactics of information warfare, the U.S. gave the Iraqi military a cyber lobotomy. Using Tomahawk missiles loaded with carbon filament rings instead of explosives, the U.S. targeted Iraqi communications and radar systems with electromagnetic pulse bombs. The pulse bombs disabled the country's power grid without destroying the power plants themselves.
An electromagnetic weapon is one which shoots out a lot of energy to force a computer network, a telephone, a car engine to either cease to operate or to destroy itself, depending upon how intense the weapons are.
Carried on the wings of Desert Storm, the U.S. military has taken the lead in the cyber arms race. The information warfare weapons of the Gulf War were efficient but crude in comparison to those the Defense Department is currently developing. In computer warfare labs, new species of silicon viruses are being created, part of the military's growing stockpile of software munitions. The Pentagon is experimenting with genetically altered bacteria. Legions of microbes are being bred that eat the electronics and insulation of computers. In the future, when a computer has a bug, it may really have a bug. Another technique is called chipping. Booby-trapped microchips are inserted into electronic systems exported to possible future threats. The chips are programmed for remote control by the U.S. government.
We began with this concept actually back in the early 1970s when we sold a telephone switch to the country of Poland. And the U.S. military and the government said, this is great, you can sell them the switch. However, we want you to add this little thing in there. And what it was a remote-controlled detonator that in case the Russians had a land-based attack to Western Europe through Poland, we could remotely shut down the entire Polish telecommunications infrastructure with one switch.
Machines aren't the only target of information warfare. The human mind has also been marked. Commando Solo is the Pentagon's newest weapon in its information warfare arsenal. Packed with 30,000 pounds of broadcasting equipment, the EC-130 is a flying radio and television station. Assigned to the Air Force Special Operations Command, its mission is to conduct psychological operations. Commando Solo's track record is impressive. Its broadcasts are credited with causing mass defections during the Gulf War and keeping locals calm in Haiti during Operation Uphold Democracy. Future broadcasts may be more unconventional. Satellites could beam false information to television networks.
The use of creating false realities has tremendous power. Imagine, for example, If there is a video of Saddam Hussein doing something terribly inappropriate with a camel, what are his people going to say in response to that if it's broadcast over their network? The capability for the wielding of power by creating ersatz videos, ersatz truth, is immense.
Psychological operations are the most Orwellian of info-war tactics. Allied with the power of computer special effects, cyber warriors can manufacture any reality they wish.
Anyone who saw the movie Forrest Gump knows what can be done with computerization to the images that we see, and we believe. Well, what is the ability in the not too distant future to take imagery, morphed, changed, altered, put it on the internet, and do we know what we're seeing now? Can you believe what you're seeing?
When we have at the desktop the ability to take a real piece of video and at a few commands transform that video into a false reality that is indistinguishable from its prior generation, from the original tape, and you take this fake reality and send it to the news media or send it to the police, how do we know what's real? We are in the next 3 years going to be unable to distinguish truth from fiction because of the desktop computer.
Cyber war, where information is power and not necessarily truth.
Round 1 test conductor report spacecraft go.
T-minus 9, 8.
The importance of space in today's or the future modern warfare, I don't think can be overemphasized.
7, 6, 5.
The imagery that's available from space, the communications that can be managed from space,
4, 3, 2.
and other types of information warfare, all in support of the warfighter, make space a very important fourth medium in future warfare.
1. Engine start. 0 on ignition. 1.
Information warfare will increase the number of celestial outposts in space. Satellites are playing a major role in communication, surveillance, navigation, and missile detection. Serving high above the computer commandos is America's secret fleet of surveillance satellites. Thick fog, cloud cover, or the dead of night, these are no barriers to the electronic eyes of spy satellites. These satellites have awesome information gathering power. On board, optically enhanced cameras can view objects smaller than 25 centimeters. Spy satellites can also record phone calls, read faxes, and intercept email. Nearly any electronic communication can be detected by these celestial sentinels, watching and listening from the high ground of space.
It has often been called the fourth medium: sea, land, air, and finally space. We use it for reconnaissance, for imagery, for intelligence gathering, and it provides tremendous amount of support in those areas to the warfighter, either in the air, on the ground, or on the sea.
Satellite images possess unique beauty. From low Earth orbit, our world seems like a place of tranquil harmony. On closer inspection, the signs of political unrest and conflict become evident. This photo reveals oil well fires in Kuwait during the Gulf War. These images are of artillery shelling in Bosnia. Spy satellites are a formidable ally to America's cyber warriors, but they are only one type of spacecraft in an armada of satellites, each designed for a specific informational need. The U.S. Defense Department is preparing for the new era of information war by creating an infosphere. a network of celestial outposts that bestows near omnipotent powers of communication and knowledge.
The advantages that space systems, give us today are really across a large spectrum of military operations. We have satellite systems today that can help us know very closely where we are on the surface of the Earth. Defense Meteorological Satellite Program gives us very good information about what the environment is that we're operating in. Is it going to be raining? Is it raining? What's the depth of water? What's the wave height of water? We have multispectral imagery satellites that help us understand what environment we're going to be operating in before we even get there. Missile warning systems enable us to know when we are being threatened by ballistic missile launches. And communication satellites.
The U.S. military's fleet of silent space warriors is monitored at the highly secure Falcon Air Force Base. Located at the foot of the Rocky Mountains, the facility observes all orbiting machinery.
For you to back out here, so...
Using the Global Positioning System, the spacecraft provide real-time navigation to American soldiers all over the world, from infantrymen to tank platoons.
Identified tank. Tank identified. Range 1,200 meters.
Low-cost but high-powered GPS satellites give three-dimensional navigation capabilities to all members of the force.
Gunner, stable tank.
The system works by using 24 operational GPS satellites continuously transmitting signals to the face of the Earth. Using coordinates from 4 separate satellites, a soldier's exact position can be determined. Many have said the GPS satellite system was America's secret weapon in the Gulf War, a key to victory.
In debriefing Iraqi prisoners, we heard them say that, number one, they could not imagine that we went into that part of the desert that we did, because they tend not to go into that part of the world. It's inhospitable. It's a horrible desert. And the reason was that we had global positioning in the tanks and the tank platoons and the tank companies and the artillery batteries with our supply columns, so we were able to resupply ourselves, go in, make that left hook in an effective way.
Data from GPS satellites is also used to create battlefield maps. Their geographical data is combined with images from recon satellites. The resulting combat map rivals reality.
The image itself is just a series of pixels that's taken by the particular sensor that's on the satellite. What we do is we then combine that image with what's called a digital elevation model, so that you can actually drape the image over the relief, and you end up with a 3D perspective view. And so you don't have to actually, to do a reconnaissance, you don't need to go out and actually physically be on the terrain. We also have a system that allows you to actually fly through the terrain, and you can drive through the terrain and actually see individual buildings. You can actually see a road and follow that particular road.
Military space planners are building on the success of the GPS and satellite imagery to create an infosphere linking all sectors of the force. It's known as the Global Broadcasting System. For the first time, the U.S. military will have live video of the battle and enemy movement.
It provides the theater commander a near real-time capability to send data and video throughout the theater. So he can not only take information that comes from national sources and ship it out, but he can also take information that occurs like the last mile on the battlefield, which is the soldier with the head cam or battle damage assessment on a bomb run that's gone through. The commander in the field makes a request, and he can turn around, and if the data's on file, in less than 6 seconds, he'll have received the file through GBS. The GBS system in Bosnia is to get unmanned aerial vehicle video back from the front to the theater commander so he can make an assessment on a battle damage assessment, troop movements, whatever information he's looking for.
The most important of all military space assets is the missile warning system. Satellites dedicated to missile detection were first deployed during the depths of the Cold War. Originally designed for the detection of thermonuclear Soviet-launched ICBMs, today they have been upgraded to the capabilities of focusing on small-scale conflicts, theaters of war at the level of Bosnia or Desert Storm.
We have what's called the Defense Support Program, and it's a number of satellites that are spaced around the world to pretty much give us total coverage of the Earth, where we can see a rocket launch, a ballistic missile, or a space launch, or a theater ballistic missile.
The system has the capability of detecting tactical ballistic missile launches from third world countries or other countries that we perceive to be our enemies or could perform hostile actions against our NATO allies.
Satellites have helped maintain America's command of the high ground. In the future, if the bloodless battles of information war turn ugly, another spacecraft may join their ranks. Not a cumbersome shuttle-like space truck, this vehicle is a space fighter, a spacecraft that could be launched at a moment's notice. It could circle the Earth in hours or stay aloft for days. The spacecraft would be armed with particle beam weapons. Its lasers could blind enemy satellites or destroy Earth-based targets. The space fighter is currently flying only in the dreams of aviation designers. But for over 2 decades, America has benefited from its celestial vantage point. Many experts believe the coming age of information war may see military spaceships actually take off.
Space has added a 4th dimension to war, and one way of looking at that, you take a force that has equal ground, air, and naval resources. Exact same number of people. That force that is applying the capabilities that can be given from space forces has a distinct advantage over a force who would not be using those space forces.
Space in the future, I think, will become even more important as we become more and more dependent on communications. We will have to increase our communications capacity. Space is the place that can do that. The more information you have about that potential battlefield, which can come from imagery from space, weather from space-based satellites, all these pieces of information will help in winning that future war.
Information warfare is evolving in an era shaped by global media. TV cameras shoot every nook and cranny of a politically complex and volatile world. American soldiers are often ordered to be peacekeepers, not killers. Crowd control is difficult for soldiers with conventional weapons. Many are now armed with special weapons that can subdue an adversary without lasting injury.
U.S. forces have been recently asked to enter into different situations where lethal force is not always the answer. What that means is that drawing a gun or firing a lethal round is not always the answer now. The soldier or the user will always be equipped with lethal force. What we're looking to do is supplement that with non-lethal so that within these more restrictive rules of engagement, he can fulfill his mission.
For the U.S. military, the development of non-lethal technology has become a top priority. devices that incapacitate without permanent injury.
Air it out.
Okay. We're looking to build a rheostat of capabilities from those that simply influence and deter at the very bottom of the scale, all the way up to the use of lethal force at the top.
Let's go!
And the idea here is to give our commanders options in difficult situations that allows you to influence what's happening without having to resort to lethal force.
Unlike firearms, which you can either use to shoot or not shoot an opponent with, these weapons allow us a tailored response. From a military perspective, these weapons are probably as significant as the introduction of gunpowder-based weapons during the European Renaissance.
To disable and disarm without killing presents a significant challenge. The Pentagon is spending vast sums of money on soft-kill weapons development. Often these weapons are non-lethal ammunition that is used in conventional sidearms or shotguns.
The emphasis for the near term is to get weapons and munitions that could be fired out of standard platforms. That would be things like a 12-gauge shotgun, a 40-millimeter M203 grenade launcher, or something hand-thrown.
The ammunition for the shotgun is a 40-gram bag filled with number 9 lead shot. It comes about 300 feet per second. And at the range that you used, it has about 100 foot-pounds of energy. And that is enough energy to cause a bruise, but it's not enough to break a bone, for example, or to break the skin.
Non-lethal weapons can seem as high-tech as bubble gum. One device for subduing an enemy is sticky foam. The foam has the consistency of shaving cream and chewing gum. Troopers use sticky foam in Somalia, where the rules of engagement restrict the use of lethal force. You don't aim this weapon, just spray. The enemy becomes stuck in a thick glob of goo. There is no escaping the stuff. The only way out is for your clothes to be cut off. A prospect that may compel the enemy to surrender before a glob is fired. High-intensity sound is also being developed. You can't hear the low-frequency vibrations, but they cause pain, vomiting, and unconsciousness, but not death.
Hey, move back. Back it up. Back it up.
Breaking up of concentrations without using lethal weapons, forcing the direction crowds will take within cities. These are all things that can be done. Creating blockades, all of those things can be done with non-lethals if we have a means to deliver them, not just within throwing range or very, very close range, but perhaps we may want to deliver them 2 or 3 blocks away to break up a crowd before it comes. And that's one of the things the Marine Corps is actively experimenting with right now.
Defense experts expect non-lethal weapons to soon be standard issue to information warriors.
There's a wide range of places in where we want to install peace, and we want them to be stable when we get done, and killing people is not to our advantage at that time. This isn't about winning wars, this is about maintaining peace. Non-lethal weapons in what we're now calling peace support operations are absolutely essential. Part of those are, for instance, humanitarian operations. You just don't want to go in and kill people who are starving and that you're there to provide them food.
Whenever you use non-lethals, you have to have the backing of lethal capability, because you can't put the force at risk. Although you are using non-lethals, that you are capable and willing to turn up the volume, if you will, to turn up that rheostat I mentioned, and to use lethals. The work that we're doing to develop longer-range delivery systems and accuracies for non-lethal weapons can be very important for police forces. Systems that can blind or shield, systems that will enable us to force people from buildings or keep them from them without inflicting lethal harm on them could be very, very useful in these kinds of situations.
Non-lethal research is also being adapted for self-protection. A stun gun is on the market. The gun is battery-powered and lightweight. Tiny probes shoot out and flash an electrical signal into an assailant. Similar to radar jamming, the signal swamps nerve impulses with energy. The assailant loses control over all body functions, immobilized without pain or suffering. Collaboration between the military and law enforcement is fast producing an arsenal of non-lethal weapons for tomorrow's information warfare. Information war could be won through bloodless combat, but the sword of technology cuts both ways. Computers have endowed America with information warfare capabilities, but some believe computers have also made our nation defenseless to an attack from cyberspace.
The United States is the most vulnerable nation on the face of the planet right now to a cyber attack. Our entire society is based upon the proper operation and reliable operation of an incredible matrix of networks. When they start to collapse, so will our society and so will our economy. Today, the United States, more than any other nation, faces the specter of an electronic Pearl Harbor.
No foreign armies have fought on American soil for over 200 years. There have been no Dunkirks or Omaha beaches on our shores. This could change. Information war has no front lines, no borders. The field of combat is cyberspace, where enemies lurk down pathways crisscrossing an electronic domain formed by 1 billion computers.
The United States is very vulnerable to a cyber info attack, and that's basically because the United States over the years has evolved where information systems are part of virtually all of the various infrastructures in which our country depends. Our financial systems, our energy systems, our transportation systems, and the various systems that support our emergency response, law enforcement, and defense. And so with information systems embedded in all of these infrastructures for individuals either on the inside of institutions or remotely to be able to attack these systems, it causes very serious concern.
Potential adversaries are going to press us in ways that are different in the future. One of the lessons from Desert Storm for adversaries is you don't go nose to nose with the U.S. Rules there, we win. They know we win. So what I think you're going to see are things like terrorism emerging. They're going to test the threshold limits to see how much they can get away with before you get a massive retaliatory response.
That there are some terrorist groups in the Mideast who have overtly stated the internet is a weapon to be mastered. We will master it and use it against the United States.
There is evidence the first wave of cyber terrorists has already penetrated U.S. defenses. Beginning in 1994, an intruder of unknown origin has continually slipped past military computer security. The invader leaves no clues as to who he is or what he wants. All that is known is that someone can access Defense Department computer files at will. The Pentagon says no secrets have been compromised.
The Department of Defense here in the United States did a study, and they launched 8,932 computer attacks over a period of time against themselves to find out how strong or weak their own systems were. They successfully penetrated those systems 88% of the time. Well, that's not the bad news. The bad news is Of those, only 320 of them, 5%, were detected. But that's not the bad news. Of those, only 5%, 22, were reported. So this says, for every single computer attack that we know of, there's 400 more we don't.
To move tanks around, to move troops around, to move people around, you've got to have the internet up. You've got to have the information resources that we spent years building up and running at all times. Any disruption can really have a huge effect on what goes where, whether people get to the right place at the right time, whether resources get to a battlefield, can depend on whether the internet survives an attack.
Defense experts estimate over 30 countries are developing cyber warfare techniques. Terrorists infiltrating the virtual realm of information networks could rip apart the social and economic fabric of America.
With the infrastructures, particularly with the connection to the internet, people have access to networks from really any place in the world. That increases the network's vulnerability. That's what's particularly of great concern here in the United States, because we're so dependent on these systems.
A well-motivated, properly financed adversary of the United States who decides to take down our critical domestic infrastructures. He does not attack the military. The military is unfortunately irrelevant. He goes after the critical domestic infrastructures that affect people, that affect 260 million Americans, that take away power, take away light, that take away heat, that take away food distribution, that take away your ability to get on the subway to go to work, or your ability to pull money out of an ATM machine.
Whether you know it or not, everything you are has in some way been siphoned into cyberspace. Subtract what's in your pocket, the rest of your money exists only as silicon digits in computer networks, making you, your wealth, and safety an easy target for cyber attack.
If you're talking about the electronic Pearl Harbor scenario, an attack in this case could take place upon us, and a week later we may only begin to realize what has taken place.
Are we under attack? Is the electric power grid in the northwestern part of the United States under attack, or was it really a tree that fell on a power line that caused the brownout in 1996 in the western part of the country? If there is an attack, how big is the attack? Where is it coming from? Are we seeing just the leading edge of an attack? Has the opponent really done about all that he can do to us? All these issues are very, very difficult and very, very new when the attack is coming from cyberspace.
Good morning, sir. Hotline.
Carnegie Mellon University is the headquarters for the Computer Emergency Response Team.
And you have an email address we can contact?
Created by the Department of Defense, CERT is the SWAT team of the electronic frontier. Cyber sleuths whose only weapons are dozens of computers linked to a multitude of networks.
Our work is focused on providing technical assistance to organizations that are suffering network intrusions, basically. We focus on incidents that are cyber attacks, an attack on computers and networks that is launched using the internet or other media like dial-ups and X25 lines.
In 1995, we received and handled over 2,400 incident reports just to our site. Once those reports are received, we will look at the report and determine what happened at that site. What is the scope of it? How many hosts are involved? And then try to provide technical assistance to the site to close up that vulnerability and better secure their systems. There have been documented cases where intruders have actually broken into hospitals, changed test records, and then the hospital staff couldn't rely on the data that they had to perform medical actions, and so operations were delayed.
No longer are computer break-ins the work of prankster-playing computer hackers. Today, invasion software that can crack security systems is available to anyone.
so many of the tools that can be used to disrupt or to penetrate system, those tools are readily available on the internet. Where at one time, when networks were first being put in place, an individual would have to have a fair degree of technical capability to do harm. That's declining today.
So if two computers trust each other on the internet, an intruder can come in and pretend to be one of those computers. And that, in general, is called IP spoofing. Another form of attack that we see quite often is one called sniffing. A sniffer is when an intruder breaks in on a machine. It may not be an important machine. It could be a secretary's machine. So let's say I have a general sending war plans to a major, and on that wire also happens to be a secretary who doesn't care about the security of his machine. The intruder comes in, breaks that machine, and all of a sudden can read all of the information that's going across that wire without either party ever knowing that it happened.
Computer terrorists penetrate a system by entering the password that opens what is called the front door. Once inside, the invader can read all files in the computer, gaining information that can be used to penetrate other systems.
Some of the most important information you can read off a wire is login information, passwords. So if you're going to log in from A to B, that information that you're logging in from A to B is passing a lot of computers on the way. If a sniffer is installed on one of those computers, the intruder can read that password and use it again.
Passwords are no longer effective because there are so many tools out there to crack passwords that are freely available on the internet. There are two basic alternatives to passwords which offer much better security today. One is something you own, a token, a physical token, like your ATM card that you use. The second alternative is something you are plus something you know, your user ID, your PIN number, but the something you are is maybe a thumbprint, maybe an iris pattern off of your eye, or maybe it's your voice print, or nowadays the new technology is the capillary patterns of your face, which are unique to every one of us.
Many defense experts believe that even with advanced password protection, the most secure information networks can be cracked by aggressive, skilled computer terrorists, making traditional forms of national defense powerless.
You can't defend us like we are used to in the past, where you've got an army that can defend the land, a navy that could, we could hide behind our two oceans, or a strong air force, or even an anti-ballistic missile system like Star Wars against ballistic missiles. Because this net is all over the United States. We're absolutely intertwined with it.
Public and private telecommunications networks, transportation, financial institutions, power grids, government operations. How to protect this vast web is the challenge facing law enforcement and the military.
We're not constrained by either borders or time. Events occur in fractions of seconds, and events can occur from any place in the world and affect any other place in the world that is connected with information systems.
The main threat and danger is that we have left an open vulnerability to any knowledgeable person with a computer, irrespective of where they are in the world. If a terrorist or a country or somebody wants to cyber attack the United States, if they want to take us out, what they're going to need to do is come in over the internet, over computer dial-up lines, over satellites, disrupt our communication, disrupt our information, plant viruses, Trojan horses, worms, malicious code, the kind of computer programs that are going to disrupt and take out the critical information resources that we have, that the military relies on for preserving our country's defense.
The United States is the most technically advanced society in the world. We have the best, most complicated infrastructure upon which we've built our society, except we've built this house of cards on a pile of quicksand because we have no built-in security mechanisms to protect it. We built our society without protection. And that type of infrastructure that we've built while at one time is our greatest asset, on the other, it's our greatest vulnerability.
Most computer-dependent nation in the world. Transportation systems, power supplies, communication lines, financial institutions. Nearly everything Americans do in their day-to-day lives is linked to computers. The reliance upon computer technology has made our nation highly vulnerable to computer attacks. The Pentagon is responding to the threat of cyber attack by conducting information war games.
There's a lot of work going on today with regards to wargaming scenarios. And some of the scenarios look forward into the year 25, 2010, 2020, and information warfare gaming. So some of the postulations that we can think of are a well-armed, well-financed adversary, perhaps a nation-state, that is mad at the United States, wants to hurt us, wants to do damage, but is not stupid enough to try to send ships at us. So they're going to use some of these info-war techniques.
Computer commandos employing non-lethal weapons of silicon power may alter the tactics of warfare. These new technologies may help reduce the carnage, lessen the long, bloody struggles that continue to stain history. The information revolution has altered the world. It may also bestow a hopeful change to the ancient and brutal art of war.